Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Knox Makers. It's Tuesday night, and by tradition, we always gather on Tuesday night for what we call show and share. Folks come in, bring on projects to demonstrate for the rest of us, successes, failures, projects that have stalled out. It doesn't matter. We just want to see what you're up to, and we've got a nifty roster tonight. I'm going to get started with James, who's going to share about making music. James.
Hey, I'm James. Let's see. So I'm getting into some different types of music instruments, and first I'm learning how to play them. I actually found a music teacher that is a multi-instrumentalist. He knows about 40 different instruments or so. And we're going through and learning these, at least the basics. And then I want to try to make some of these. So this is called a gobichand, Gobichand. And the sides are supposed to be made out of bamboo. And when it's just a single note. But when you squeeze the bamboo, it just makes, it changes the sound. Oop. So that's, I think that one's maybe going to be the easiest one that I can make, but there's still a lot involved in it. But I'm going to see where that goes. And then the next one is called an ektara. That's going to be quite a bit harder to make, but it's a drone. It's just a single note, but you can hold down on the drum head and make different notes. Got another one here. So that's just a couple instruments I've been getting into, and then I've also got I found an electric sitar that I'm playing around with, and it's not a true sitar. I'll show this. First one I've got there's something called a tempura, and this would be to kind of set a bass rhythm, but you can also use it to tune something like a sitar. So this is going to help me tune, along with some apps that I've got help me tune, and then show this to Billy. This has got it, Billy. So I wish I could claim I made this. This thing is just so beautiful. This is a micro tuner, so I can fine tune with these. And it's got 5 top strings. It's got 5 top strings that are actually played plus 2 drone, almost like the short chord on a banjo. So it's a total of 7 strings on top that are actually played, and it's got 11. This one has 11 on the bottom. They're not actually, you don't actually play those. They're called sympathetic strings. Now on a real sitar, when you play the top strings, certain chords and notes, the bottom strings will resonate, and it does that if you've got this huge, massive, hollow bass right here, and it's supposed to be much longer. So this is about 3/4 the size, the length of a traditional sitar, and it's semi-hollow. It's not. This is not a true sitar. So those sympathetic strings are almost just decorative. But if you have a real sitar, the idea is you play the top strings, and when you hit certain chords, if it's tuned in different ways, you hit certain chords, and those bottom sympathetic strings will resonate, and that gives you that sound. But does kind of have a feel to it. But that's all I got. Wish me luck.
Fantastic. As some of y'all will remember, James has been with us since the early days of Knox Makers and has consistently been interested in alternative musical instruments. I really enjoy your journey, James. Thanks for sharing with us. Next up, we've got Wes, who has a CNC depth chart.
So I've been working on my CNC machine and stuff, and I decided that I needed a depth chart to tell me, how deep everything is. And if you're looking at this right now and you're saying to yourself, why is 5 before 4? Well, you're correct. That's what I was saying to myself too. So happy little accident with it, but basically I wanted to see what it would look like if I put, if I painted it at 1 millimeter, 2 millimeters, 3, would it be easy? Would it be hard? And how much work it would go into it. So the white part is just 3 layers of gesso, and then I've got 2 layers of the colored for each as well too. Let me white out a little bit more. So, and then I think the next part I may put some epoxy in these or something like that, or maybe put epoxy in the numbers here as well too. But this is a good reference for me, so I know, hey, if I cut out 3 millimeters, this is how deep it's going to be, and if I want to shave it off later on, then 3 millimeters is probably a good depth to do 2 or something like that, and what it looks like. So that's it.
What's the white part?
Gesso. So gesso is it's like a base for acrylic, and so you put that on so that way you can paint on anything else you want, or acrylic on top of it. So gesso will go right on top, and then so for the gesso I just do it one direction, let it dry, do another direction, let it dry, another direction. A lot of people do 4 or 5 or even 6 coats of gesso, but it's really up to you on what you want. This one has 3, and you can still see a little bit of white just because the orange, I didn't do it that thick over it, but this is 2 coats of the orange acrylic on here as well too. So really it's just testing and just see how things work out, see where I mess up. Ideally, on a project, I would probably put Aura mask over it so that way the white paint doesn't get on it, stuff like that. But again, this is just a test chart and something for me to mess around with. The wood I actually found here in the shop, got for free, so easy stuff. Cool, thank you.
Thanks, Wes. That seems like a really practical idea, and I feel like happy little accidents could be our motto here. Next up, we've got Sue, who has a simple alteration to show us.
So we were talking at dinner tonight about how fast the years seem to be going by. The older you are, the faster they go by. Did you know it's less than 150 days before the end of the year? Which brings me to my next favorite holiday, which I'm sure Isaac can appreciate. How many days until Halloween? 84. So I thought, okay, I want to get practice on this. And I started by going to the Barbie movie this past weekend. And so do I dress up? Do I wear a costume? What do I do? I don't really have a pink shirt, but you know what? I have this like 1970s, which is kind of a Barbie scarf. So I had a white tank top and I had this scarf. I also had a pink ball cap, right? And it had another design on the front that was embroidered. But I thought, you know what? With a little freezer paper and a printer, you can now turn that into a Barbie hat. So it was quite the hit. And I thought, I'm going to share this, even though I may be a little embarrassed about going to a Barbie movie, but oh well. Because as you think of Halloween costume, something with just simple freezer paper, you can iron it on with the low heat iron, and it will stay. So, and then you can peel it off and have your original hat back. So that's it for mine. Yeah, Amy? It was a lot more musical than I was expecting. I don't care much for musicals, but I thought the content of the movie was really good. It was quite enjoyable. Okay.
I have a question. So the Barbie that's on there, the word, how did you get that on there? Is that?
This is freezer paper.
Yep.
All right, are you ready?
Yep.
All right. And there's the original hat. So this is just freezer paper that I printed. Whoops. I just printed Barbie. I cut a piece of freezer paper, 8.5 and 11, put it in the printer, printed Barbie, and then I had taken an idea of what this would be, cut it out, and then put it on. And as I ironed this bottom part, I realized quickly that this top part didn't really want to lay down. So, all right, let's cut a little slot so I can overlap it. So, and then ironed it right on.
Just a regular, like, inkjet printer, or?
Yep. Nothing fancy.
Did you have to tape it down on another piece of paper to get it through, or just you ran?
Nope. Cut it 8.5 by 11. Yes.
Don't you have some kind of embroidery machine that could have done that for you?
We do, but I already had an emblem on here and I didn't want to take this off.
So you could have put that on a piece of just,
I could have put it on cloth and sewed it on, but hey, what can you do real quick?
okay.
Right? Let's throw it together.
Okay.
What was the font?
Copy paste off of an image I found. Freezer paper has like a light wax on the back side, and that's what gets it to adhere. A lot of sewers will use it, or quilt makers will use it. They'll cut out their size and then iron it onto their fabric. Anything else? All right, thank you all.
All right, Sue has won my heart with the first Halloween share of the season. Very nice. I myself have a tragic Halloween project fail that I'll be sharing next week, and I hope that y'all will be bringing in Halloween projects as well. Next up, we've got Joe, who has stained glass.
I'd like to say first, Sue's very topical since I was planning on dressing as Barbie for Halloween. Okay, just entirely different, never touched stained glass before, but John was offering a class, so I thought I'd give it a shot. He said keep it simple, so the first thing I kept simple, and one of the issues with this is this is an opalescent glass, but you can't really see it, and it's unphotographicable, which is a word I made up just for this. And I straight edges, simple. I really didn't like the. This is called caming. And so I'm working on that. And I'm going to get a dye. There's a way of making it black, which is the way you see it in Europe, and it looks less globby, I hope. So we'll see what happens with that. I'm also out there right now. If anybody knows me, can you guess what this is going to be? Yeah. And I can't really show it. It's got some texture to it that doesn't show up here very well either, but different colored. I've got a variety of tomato I grew this year. It's called a Stony Brook Heart, and can you see the? It looks like a candle flame. I'm afraid we're not able to see anything here. It's red and orange, and it's really beautiful. So this hopefully it's not the same shape, but. Anyway, so I'll be out there working on it, and Sean has another class in a couple of weeks, but I think it's sold out. And there he is.
It's this weekend, and there's one
Okay, this weekend, and since they both sold out, there'll probably be more classes. And it's a fun thing to do, and you only get little minor cuts occasionally. Any questions? Okay, thank you.
Very nice. And it all comes back to tomatoes. Next up, we've got Rob, who has a bench to share.
I'll show you the bench first, and then I'll show you. So, I've been tasked. I've got my daughter's getting married in September, and we've got a lot of family coming to a brunch, and I need a lot more seating. So, I decided instead of buying folding chairs to put in the lawn, which never sit correctly, I figured I'll just make up a couple of benches. So, this was my first prototype. See that it's going to work. And I'll show you, maybe. So what I did is I got inspiration on the web for plans for a bench. So I said, you know, this is reasonable. The problem with this bench is it was way too big for what I wanted. I had a picnic table I made 25 years ago that was 8 foot, and it had 8-foot benches. And if you've ever had a picnic table with an 8-foot bench, people don't sit in the middle because they sit on the end, and then nobody wants to step over to get in. So you end up having an 8-foot bench with maybe 2 or 3 people sitting at it. So I realized when I go to make these benches, I want them a little more portable, but I also calculated these out and said, you know, if I go 42 inches wide plus a foot in between each bench, then I get 2 people at each bench, and there's a 1-foot gap that they can walk through to sit down on the inside. So I get 8 feet at 42 inches, right? Did a little bit of the math. Get back into here. So that was my inspiration, though, for the general design. And so I cut out the pieces, right? So if you look at the pieces, and if you notice, this is all just regular pine. This is construction pine. I wanted like a two-tone. So if you look at the way that happens, the top is wood because it's pressure treated, because nobody wants to sit on peeling paint, and the bottom stuff is going to eventually peel over time, right? But the key is I need to be able to duplicate this 8 times, right? So what I did is I have what's called a tapering jig that I set up to be able to duplicate. There are some complex angles happening on the feet. That's the only place. The rest of it is pretty straightforward. If you look at these pieces, they're pretty straightforward. The legs actually have a complex set of angles. There's a 90-degree here that's not the same 90 that's over here, right? So there's 3 angles to cut here. This long one's the hard one, which is what I use the tapering jig for. That's the bench. If you probably couldn't see from there, but it's screwed in from the top and doweled so that it makes a nice top.
Did you sell those off?
Not on the one you're going to be sitting on. The real key, and I learned this a long time ago when I've made some outdoor benches, is the mistake that they always make, and you see the plans that were on the web, they flatten the bottom of these. If you flatten the bottom, it works great on concrete, asphalt, or wood, but if you put it in grass, you can never lay it straight. It's that wobbly bench that you sit down on. If you just taper the edge here so that you have a tip at the end, first off, the bench does not want to tip over, because the more weight you put on that end, the deeper it digs into the ground. So these become extremely stable on grass. You can stand on this thing and it won't go anywhere. So that's one of the tricks, is the change on what he did in the web. Put a little 7-degree taper on the ends. And then I did like the arch in his original design, so I kept that. All these edges are routed. And then that's one of the benches. I've made 2 so far. Put it together, glued it up, and said, yeah, this is going to work. And so now I've already started cutting all of the pieces. Cut all the pieces, glue all the pieces, paint all the pieces. So that's the plan, is to end up making 8 of these things and then donating most of them when I'm done.
Oh, I was gonna say, I think it would be nice if maybe if you monogrammed them with the date, their names or something like that.
Yeah.
You already spent a lot and stuff like that, so.
Yeah,
I think you have a CNC, so.
There you go. Yeah, I mean, that's interesting. I probably won't. There's a couple other clubs I belong to, and they've already said, hey, if you got extra, and I said, yeah, I'm not storing 8 benches indefinitely, so I'm going to donate a few of them there and things like that. So, Tracy?
If you do taper the legs, the feet, how do they work on, do they still work on concrete?
Yeah, you can see.
Oh, right,
Right, it's right here, and it's very stable, it doesn't want to go anywhere. The ends on concrete, if you drop it a few times, right, they'll start tamping in a little bit, but it's extremely hard, right? And I did like the two-tone. My wife wasn't sure that top is pressure treated. The problem is by September, it will not dry out, so there's no way I'm staining it. But probably in the next year or so after being outside, I'll be able to put a nice deck stain on it. It'll look, an oil deck stain, and it'll look nice, a little two-tone.
Did you stain the bottom?
Painted, that is actually a deck paint. They call it a stain, but they lie to you. It's actually a paint, and I know it's a paint. On raw wood that you've cleaned up and it's nice and clean, it won't peel. The top might, because the sun will beat on it. It would definitely peel like crazy if that was pressure treated. So that deck paint that they call stain is not a stain. If it cleans with water, it's not a stain. The paint that's on there now, the deck stain, is a latex deck stain. So it's real easy to paint on there. That's untreated pine, right? It's got 2 coats. It's not coming off for a long time, right?
That one was pretty dry.
It was very dry. It was all construction lumber that I stored indoors. So it's all bone dry, so it sucked up that paint. Of course, the bottoms where the grain is, I really got that on thick, finished painting it, and then cleaned it off. So it really soaked into the bottom, because that's going to take the most abuse, the very bottom. Anything else? Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Rob. Clearly very well thought out. And that concludes our sign-ups for the evening. Did anyone else bring a share tonight? Yes, sir.
Hi guys, I'm Brad. I've been working on this lathe that I belonged to my brother who passed away, and I donated it. And it sat out under one of the benches for a long time, and then Brian kind of lit a fire under me. And so what happens to so many of these old mid-century, mid-20th century industrial tools, people steal the legs off of them, because they make one of these big solid tabletops with epoxy and everything, and they don't know how to make the legs for them. So they steal these, and these industrial-looking legs. And I found the legs for $500, and I said, nah, I think I'll make some legs, and that'll be a fun thing to do at Knox Makers. And so I had this poplar that also belonged to my brother that I inherited, and so I started. This is what the lathe looks like from the factory. And it has the wooden shelves. They're pine. The motor just sits down there in the bottom, and the pulley goes up. And they're really all cast iron, really beautifully made. So then I decided to make the legs out of poplar. So that's just the mortise and tenon that I was working out on the top. That's glued up in my shop. And I used some cutoffs so that the square would push, so that the clamp would push square. And that's a different way. So that's the mortise that's chopped out. And that's sometimes the perspective gets a little weird. Now this is, one of the things I did is the way the legs attach to the base, I just chopped out a little angle there. And I epoxied it. But this is where I was experimenting with these, they call them structural screws. It's a new thing that I just kind of discovered. They've been around a while. But they have a drill bit in the end of them, and they're like deck screws, only they make them, you can get them like 10 inches long or even longer than that. I mean, they really go in. And when it's just going into the end grain, I wanted a real long one, and I also wanted as much of an angle as I could get it from a structural standpoint so that it wasn't come straight into the end grain, but crossing the grain a little bit. I figured it'd be stronger. And plus, this way, all the weight pushing down, it's pushing square against the bench. It shouldn't be wanting to spread. So I thought about it too much, probably. But anyway, so that's me chiseling out those little bevels on the bottom, and then that's figuring the line. That's it upside down there, and so there they are clamped up. going a little fast there. And I'll just go through these kind of quick. And what I was trying to do is make it look like welded square tubing. And there's another picture of one. You can see the legs, the original legs are cast iron. They're really nice. And they get wider at the top like the new lathe out there. And that wideness at the top keeps it from racking. So we got it. I'm painting them up. And so here I brought them to Knox Makers and started fitting the boards, which are also poplar. And we got them pretty good. And there's Bodger and Michael Bellamy helping me out. And we tried to drag it. It was really heavy at this point. That lathe was really heavy. And it chattered, and I could feel it was racking. That's when I realized that all these fasteners really weren't strong enough. Of course, I hadn't bolted the bottom on yet, the bottom shelf. And so there we are, real proud of ourselves and all. And so I was really getting excited because I was beginning to see what it was going to look like. So then I bought this, this poplar is amazing. It stains, you can make it look just like walnut. This is a stain called gunstock, and I never heard of it before. It's Minwax, penetrating stain. I sanded it pretty good. Most of this you don't see because either the lathe's on top or the motor's on top and there's various stuff. But that's one coat rubbed in, maybe 2 coats rubbed on of Minwax over 2 days. And you can see the holes dug out for the belt, for the pulley drive to go through. But I love the color of it, and you can go out there and look at it and see it in person. So then I decided, well, I was going to make these wooden brackets. And so they're made out of poplar too, which is not the strongest wood in the world, so they're kind of oversized and they're angled. And so there they are, sanded and painted, and there they are. And then I realized that I really could have gone and made some really cool iron ones in the blacksmithing shop that would have been stronger. And I'm going, that's what Knox Makers is all about. You don't do all this stuff by yourself, you know? So I'm learning. But anyway, so this is interesting. These are the little clamp pads I made because I epoxied these. I cleaned up the paint and I epoxied these brackets onto the legs, so that it would be not just mechanical fasteners to depend on that soft poplar, but a real. And so the shape of those hooks over the top, and then the clamp goes down, and you know, they stay put. I did put mechanical fasteners in it too, but I was really dependent on the epoxy. It's West System epoxy with thickener in it. Oh, and this, I posted it on a UK, there's a guy in the UK that loves these. He says, if you know anybody that's restoring one of these old lathes, send me some pictures of it. So this came off of it. I sent him, and like 2 days later, he had posted these up. And this was before I put the brackets on. And I'm like, God, the guy had the same problem as me. And I was like, wait a minute, that is me. So here it is pretty much like it's going to be. And I love the gray, the metal gray. So that's another one that's been restored. And that's now, the base looks so good that I'm going to have to strip and paint the lathe itself now and buff up the machine surfaces where stuff's got to slide back and forth. And I'm going to put a paddle switch like you may have seen on the table saw that you kick with your knee so you don't need your hands. I bought one. I've got the various stuff for it. But anyway, I wasn't going to say anything about this because I really wanted to finish it before but then I thought, nah, I've been posting about it, so I just wanted to bring an update to everybody. It's coming along. I can't say when it'll be finished, but I am working on it. So anyway.
Any questions? Is that a shop stiff?
No, it's a Delta,
Okay.
which was bought by Rockwell, so we're all down to a Rockwell Delta. And they were built up through the 60s. That one, ours, the one we have here is 1946. I was talking to one guy in the machine shop and he said he has an old machine lathe or boring or drill press, it was painted green. It was a Delta, and it said, had a plaque on it that said, make military specs. So it's Army green. And that's really cool. Because that, I mean, this is, you have to look at the castings and all, it's just beautiful. I mean, it's what we were doing in World War II is just phenomenal.
It's really top-notch work. I know I've really enjoyed watching you post about it. I'm sure many of you would say it's just a pleasure to see folks do stuff when you know they know what they're doing. I feel like I'm learning a little something by osmosis, and I certainly appreciate what you do for us. Anybody else bring anything for us tonight? Yes, ma'am.
I suppose I won't have an excuse to go over 3 minutes because I literally brought a clock on me. It was recently there we go. It was recently pointed out to me that my kitchen doesn't have a clock in it. My stove doesn't have a digital clock for some reason. And my microwave is like, it's a tiny kitchen, my microwave's not inside it. So I just figured I could buy a clock that's like really ugly and cheap, or a nice one that's really expensive. So instead, I just made one. I laser cut a clock instead out of plywood, and painted it myself so it would match some of my other stuff that I have in my apartment. I did not make the mechanism myself. I don't know how to do that. That's from Michaels, but I, went on Inkscape. I made it 2 layers so that the backside I could paint. It's hard to tell on camera, but the bottom layer is pink. I just spray painted it after cutting it, and the top is obviously green. I cut it all the way through, including the numbers, which is why I didn't really think about the fact that the 6 and the 9 have the hole in the middle until it happened, and I was surprised. I tried. I think it fell through the mesh. I literally looked around and it wasn't there anymore. Again, I was surprised for some reason. I thought about remaking it, or I've been thinking about remaking it and just etching the numbers, because then it doesn't fall through because it's part of the clock. But some of the nice part about having the bottom layer is that the mechanism accommodates up to 6 millimeters. So it's, 2 layers of plywood. And it means I can etch on the back. It's a little, is it readable? I don't want to put it down because it's, there's hands. I've been labeling all my stuff, the Borb Collective. I study birds. I like Star Trek. It's a little on the nose. Yeah, I've been labeling stuff like that. And then you obviously can't see what's under the mechanism, but there's a little washer where on the center where the hands are. And I figured if I engrave the circle where that washer is, it'll fit a little more closely between where these 2 meet, which is the nice part about having, another nice part about having 2 layers is 2 colors, backside, all that stuff. And that's a clock.
Okay, I really like your 2-layer, 2-color trick. I'm totally stealing that. Anybody else bring anything for us tonight? No? Okay. I realize now that I've been negligent in mentioning we have a photographer with us this evening. You may have noticed and been too nice to point out that our website is dusty and sad, and we need some beautiful new photography to let people know how fabulous we all are. And so that is the purpose. It is to help promote Knox Makers and the wonder that is this community. So everyone please be fabulous and fascinating tonight, as you always are. Also, we have some classes coming up that I want to mention, but unfortunately, if you don't have tickets, you are out already. On Saturday, August the 12th, we're doing Metalworking 101, sold out. Sunday, August the 13th, Art Glass 101, likewise sold out. Next Wednesday, August the 16th, you do have an opportunity to get the embroidery machine authorization at 6:30 p.m. If you cannot yet embroider things, this would be a chance for you to do that. Also next Wednesday, August the 16th, is a special day for me because it is my Knox Makers anniversary. It was on that day 11 years ago that I first visited Knox Makers and signed up. So thank you all for being fabulous. I love what we do here together. Also next Thursday, I wanted to mention that we do have a wood turning basics class, which you've also missed. So get on the class schedule and sign up for classes because these things go very quickly like hotcakes. Our instructors are amazing and everybody wants what they're selling. We are, of course, an all-volunteer organization, and I would like you to volunteer right now. Somebody can change the filters in the air handlers, my man, and someone hopefully will take out the trash for us. Someone hopefully will take out the trash for us. My man, you shouldn't let him do that this often. We've got several folks here tonight for the first time. Please make them feel welcome. If this is your first visit, please be sure you find somebody with a red badge, get a tour, get your questions answered. Otherwise, we're all just going to hang out in the workshop, make weird stuff, and have a good time. Thank you, everyone, for being with us tonight.